Think about the best version of yourself. Not the richest, not the most successful, the best. The version of you that was happiest, smartest, most alive. Where do you imagine that person? For most people, the answer isn't somewhere in the future. It's somewhere in the past. Usually their 20s, sometimes even younger. And that's a problem. Because the moment you believe your best years are behind you, your relationship with the future changes. You stop looking forward. You stop expecting growth. You stop believing that the most meaningful chapters of your life might still be unwritten. Instead, life quietly becomes an exercise in preservation, holding on to what remains, trying not to lose too much, trying to stay close to the person you once were. But what if that entire story is wrong? What if the version of yourself you've been mourning never actually existed? Because when scientists started measuring how human beings actually change over time, they discovered something surprising. There is no single peak. There never was. The abilities that make you who you are don't rise and fall together. They follow different timelines. Some peak early, others don't arrive until decades later. And some of the qualities people value most don't reach their highest point until an age many assume is already decline. The strange thing is that we rarely hear this story. We're surrounded by a culture obsessed with youth. Youth is where beauty peaks, where energy peaks, where potential peaks. At least that's what we're told. The message is repeated so often that it starts to feel like a law of nature. By 30, people worry they're running out of time. By 40, many feel left behind. And by 50, some have already convinced themselves that their most important years are over. But the data tells a very different story, and it begins with a fact that seems to confirm our worst fears. Part of you really does peak young, very young. In one of the largest studies ever conducted on how cognitive abilities change across age, researchers analyzed data from tens of thousands of people. They found that raw processing speed, the ability to think quickly and react rapidly, reaches its highest point around age 18 or 19. After that, it slowly declines. And for many people, that's where the conversation ends. Case closed. Peak reached. Downhill from here. But that's like reading the first page of a book and assuming you know how it ends. Because processing speed is only one ability, and you are made of many. While one part of you is slowing down, other parts are still climbing. Take memory. Not the kind that makes you forget where you left your keys. The kind psychologists actually measure. Short-term memory continues improving into your 20s. Memory for faces keeps developing into your 30s. And then something even more interesting happens. Researchers discovered that one of the most important social abilities a human being can possess doesn't peak in youth at all. Imagine looking at a photograph that shows nothing except a person's eyes. No smile, no body language, just their eyes. From that tiny fragment, you have to guess what they're feeling. Are they anxious? Amused? Suspicious? Ashamed? This ability, reading emotions accurately, is one of the foundations of social intelligence. It's what allows you to read a room, to sense tension before anyone says a word, to understand what people mean, not just what they say. Most people assume this is either a talent you're born with or a skill that fades with age. The research suggests the opposite. This ability often peaks in your 40s and 50s, not your 20s, not your 30s. Think about what that means. The version of you that understands other human beings best may not even exist yet. the version of you capable of seeing what others miss, of navigating conflict with wisdom rather than impulse, of understanding people deeply instead of simply reacting to them. That person may still be under construction. And then the story becomes even stranger, because there are really two kinds of intelligence, the fast kind and the deep kind. The fast kind helps you solve a new problem immediately. The deep kind is built slowly, from everything you've experienced, learned, suffered, read, and survived. One fades earlier, the other keeps growing. Researchers found that vocabulary, knowledge, and accumulated understanding often continue increasing well into the later decades of life. In other words, some people are still becoming intellectually richer at an age when society has already labeled them old, which means the story we've been told about aging isn't just incomplete, it's backwards. But none of this explains something else, something millions of people feel. Because if so many abilities continue improving, why do so many people feel worse as they get older? The answer lies in a completely different curve, one that has nothing to do with intelligence, nothing to do with memory, nothing to do with wisdom. It has to do with how life feels from the inside. An economist named David Blanchflower spent years analyzing well-being data from around the world, different countries, different cultures, different incomes, different languages, and he kept finding the same pattern, again and again and again. Human happiness follows a U shape. Life satisfaction starts relatively high when we're young. Then, often without us noticing, it begins drifting downward, through our 20s, through our 30s, into our 40s, until it reaches its lowest point at around 47 years old. Not because everyone experiences a dramatic crisis, not because everyone made the wrong decisions, not because everyone failed, just because they're human. And here's the part that almost sounds unsettling. Researchers later discovered a remarkably similar pattern in chimpanzees and orangutans. Think about that. They don't compare themselves to strangers online. They don't worry about career status. They don't obsess over retirement plans. Yet they still experience a similar midlife dip, which suggests something profound. Part of what we call a midlife crisis may not be a personal failure at all. It may be a deeply human experience, a valley that many people walk through without realizing they're standing in it. But every valley has two sides, and that's the part nobody talks about. After the bottom, the curve rises. People in their 60s and 70s often report greater life satisfaction than they did during the grinding middle years. The climb back up is just as real as the descent, which completely changes the question. Maybe the question was never, when do humans peak? Maybe the real question is, which part of you are we talking about? Because your fastest self is not your wisest self. Your youngest self is not your happiest self. Your most knowledgeable self is not your most energetic self. And your best self may not belong to a single age at all. Maybe that's the mistake. Maybe we've been looking for one peak when life was designed as a mountain range. Different summits, different seasons, different versions of you arriving at different times. So go back to that image of your best self, the one you automatically placed somewhere in the past, the one you assumed you've already met. There's a very good chance you're wrong, because the person you're becoming is still unfolding, and the version of you that will matter most may still be waiting somewhere ahead.